And there are, I think, 3 main sects, the Zen and Shingon and Tendai. These are the 3 main sects in Japan that have a monastic tradition. The other 10 sects do not have a monastic tradition. In a monastic tradition, usually for any of the sects, requires at least a minimum training period of 1 year in the monastery. There are other things, a degree counts towards the total resume that puts you up in the ladder. There are very different levels, 12 different levels in the Zen world, 12 different statuses, the top 3 being for Zen masters. Yes, ma'am.
How were you addressed? Does that change as your status advances?
How was that?
How are you addressed? And does that change as your status advances?
How am I addressed? The general, yeah, it can. Now I would be referred to as an Osho, which is a general term for priest. More specifically, which most people don't know that much about, is I would be considered now a Fukujushoku, which would be assistant abbot. And when you become the abbot, then it's also another major step up, because you are given responsibility for a temple. It doesn't matter what the size of the temple is, it's still a major promotion. And become abbot or the chief priest, yes, that is considered a major step up, and that matters to a lot of people. And people frequently ask me, gee, or especially when they first meet me, well, what should I call you? And I just say, well, my first name is Martin. That's worked pretty well up till now. So, now basically, titles kind of embarrass me. Yes, sir.
Could you share with us the sound of your chanting somewhere along the line?
Could I share with you the sound of one hand clapping? Was that the question? No?
No, chanting.
Oh, chanting. Would you like to hear some chanting?
Yes, yes.
Well, that's an easier question. First of all, I'm not allowed to tell you the answer to the sound of one hand
I
clapping.
know that. I didn't ask that.
Good. Chanting. Yeah, usually it has some other, a bell and a little drum you pound, but also the chanting, generally even priests don't even know what we're chanting. It's Chinese characters that were translated from Sanskrit. The original meaning is not nearly as important as the act or the mood that one has while chanting. So will I chant? I'm trying to think of a simple one. I just have to interrupt it. It's the basic sutra, the Hanya Shinyo. Maga Hanya Ramida and on and on and on. In the monastery it's much faster, but it becomes, in a way, a little different from, say, a Gregorian chant. Not as attractive, but it becomes a meditative state in itself. I do not think about the meaning. Most priests do not think about the meaning. It's basically a song. And in the beginning, I can say that I honestly hated chanting. I hated Japanese ceremonies. I did not come to this country when I was 19 years old to learn how to perform ceremonies. That was not my religious quest here. But later, as I grew older, it didn't bother me that much. And now it's just, well, ceremonies don't bother me so much anymore. Yes, sir.
In another lecture, they explained that the rulers here invited Buddhism in for reasons of state.
Yes.
So I'd be interested to know what did they have in mind that Buddhism could contribute to the running of the state, and secondly, can you explain the history of this certification process? How did that come about?
Okay, the first question is, actually it wasn't so much invited in as that it was allowed in. Any of these 13 sects brought in from China usually there was some charismatic figure or some fellow who brought it over. Actually, several people would bring over, but say any particular new sect would be brought in, and as soon as possible, they would want the support of the government. If you had the support of the government, then you were in. If you did not have the support of the government, you were not in. So one by one, each of these sects gained favor with different emperors or different governments, and generally they were brought in or approved of and were dedicated to the safety and security and preservation of the nation or the state. At that time, of course, they didn't have nations, but even here, this is why these larger buildings were built in capitals. The priests put in charge were in charge of prayers for the state and the government of that time. And each of these 13, at one time or another, won a certain amount of approval. And once they got state backing, they got state funds, and then they flourished. Without any of those, and of course, with each new one that came in, each was, of course, oppressed by the others that were already in. And over the centuries, well, all 13 of the major sects in China eventually made it here. So that's how they were brought in, not exactly invited, but accepted, and if they were embraced by the powers that be, then they succeeded. It takes a lot of money to build one of these things like Todaiji, and that required, I mean, that's almost like, say, building a pyramid. They were very expensive, and it took a lot of energy and time, and only a government or a ruling military class could do it, or could afford it. That's how they got sponsorship. And every new sect that came in from Japan, the first thing they sought was sponsorship. They didn't try to work so much among the younger or the people, because there wasn't much future in that. Once you got that big sponsor, then you had everything, or everything followed. And what was the second part of the question?
What did the government, why did the government think it was of interest to them? Now, they mentioned at one point that they were, the temples were used for vital statistics.
Yes.
They were key registering births and deaths.
Yes.
But what else did the government think they would get out of having these sects here?
Aside from the religious protection, or somebody officially saying prayers for them on protecting the state, they also got, temples also brought a writing system, brought literature, a new system of thought, which was revolutionary at the time, and new education, new cultures, new way of new Japanese, which are now standard traditional Japanese arts. For example, tea, green tea was brought